Welcome to the Physique Blueprint podcast for women building strong, sculpted hourglass physique, the stage being optional. I'm your host, Chelsea Kidd, coach and founder of Physique Blueprint. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Physique Blueprint. I'm Chelsea Kidd, your host, and this is my first solo episode. So instead of what I would normally be doing and introducing a guest right now, I'm just going to briefly introduce myself, and then we are going to dive into everything that you need to know before starting a contest prep or competition prep. So, like I said, my name is Chelsea Kidd. I'm the owner of Physique Blueprint and the head coach. I'm also the founder of the Facebook group, Women's Bodybuilding and Lifestyle Athletes. I have a 20-year background in exercise science and fitness, from everything from corporate wellness to coaching. I am a competitor or a previous competitor on a very long hiatus. I have a couple top 5 finishes at the national level for NPC. And I absolutely love being able to help women sculpt hourglass physiques, whether their end goal is the stage or not. So today I want to kind of piggyback on something that I'm doing in the group. I'm running a mock prep challenge right now. And the idea of it is to take women in to this challenge format where they're on an 8-week timeline and simulate prep, but with a lot more emphasis on education. So we're doing weekly Q&As. We're talking about unpacking the science a little bit more behind like what the peak week strategy looks like. My assistant coach, Sean Van Horsen, is going to be stepping in to talk strategy around fat loss, the different levers that we pull, and peak week strategy. We're also going to be going into some PED awareness, not for promotion or anything like that, but just to make sure that people kind of understand what's out there, what they're up against, and how these different mechanisms work. So it's meant to be very education heavy, but actually pull women along in that process so they kind of get the feel of it. So if I were talking to you on a strategy call and you told me that you wanted to go into a competition prep and you wanted to start right away, some of the main things that I would want to assess would be your lifestyle and where you're at right now, which is a lot of what I'm going to talk about today. It's establishing where your lifestyle is, establishing where it needs to be to make prep not a horrible, hellacious experience that is awful on the back end, and how to close the gap if you do have one. And then also a physique assessment. So let's start with the physique assessment because I think this is really helpful. A physique assessment is going to be different for everybody that I talk to. So if I'm talking to somebody who's really interested in just getting on stage for the first time, they've been following the sport for a while, this is a bucket list item, I get a sense from them that they truly really just want the experience to go through the prep, and they've been doing the lifestyle and like, hey, it's just time, like let's just get on stage and see how I do, and outcome aside, I can't wait to experience getting to show day. That's a really good mindset to be in. Either way, and the flip side of that is when I do meet some people sometimes that are like, I want to go pro in my first season. And they may not be saying that, but it's just kind of, I can sense that there's a lot of pressure. Like maybe they're out to prove something. And you can ask this in our Facebook group all day long. Like a lot of us find our way to this sport because we're trying to prove something, whether we're aware of it or not. But it may be just trying to prove your value, maybe getting that revenge body, whatever it is. So it's kind of feeling out where their mindset is so that we can align where their physique is with their expectations and make sure we don't end up 4 months from now with a jaded competitor. So let's talk about the physique assessment. The most standard way to do this is to get a sense of the criteria. So NPC is a really great example for this. NPC is a big US-based league for anybody that's not, or federation for anybody that's not familiar. They're the largest in the States, and they have really clear criteria online, as do a lot of other federations, for what they're looking for each division within the federation. So the main divisions that I support and we'll be talking about today are fit model, bikini, wellness, and figure. If you go on npc.com, you can look up any of those divisions and they will show you what the Olympian, so the top of the top of the top, not the person that is actually going to show up and stand next to you on show day, but the top of the top, this is what they're looking for. This is a good way to just kind of, and we don't have to have the pictures side by side, but if I can get an athlete's check-in pictures and just see them hitting the mandatory pose for the division that they're most interested in or that they think they're interested in, that gives me a really good sense of, so you want to be a figure girly, but we've been lifting weights for a year. That's probably going to be a good look to start with fit model and grow into figure down the road. Or at somebody who just seems to be a little bit genetically predisposed to putting on more muscle in their upper body. I see this a lot, especially with my women that are 35 plus, where it's, you've really got to throw a lot of different mechanisms at getting growth for that lower body, your legs and your glutes. So yeah, their upper body may be on point, but their lower body is lagging. So that may be something that, okay, let's look at bikini and we can grow into wellness if you want. So just a brief overview on the divisions. The fit model is a very, very, I want to say mainstream fit woman look. So it doesn't carry as much muscle. The conditioning or the leanness of fit model is not as intense as bikini. So they're holding a little bit more body fat, but they still have really beautiful structure. So nice hourglass physiques where their shoulders have a little bit of width to them. So it makes their waist look even smaller. They do have small waist, hip width looks really nice and everything. So just think like the woman that you see at the gym and you're like, oh my gosh, she's so cute. You just have like such a great figure. Then bikini has a little bit more muscle than that. Wellness and is a little bit more conditioned. Wellness is going to have a lot more muscle on the lower body, and then figure is going to have more muscle overall. And I will do a whole episode just talking about the division. So I'm going to pause and not going further on that right now. But basically the idea is to sit down in that physique assessment and let's talk about, what do you actually like? Like, have you been following the sport, and is there a look that you really want to grow into or target, or that's what we're shooting for this time? Because that is going to dictate your training. It's also going to dictate a little bit of your timeline for getting into this sport. Okay, so that's the physique assessment. It's a great way for me to customize training whenever I have athletes come in, and it's a great way for the athlete to know what's realistic for them. And a lot of people will say, and there is truth to this, that you don't have to pick a division. I mean, sometimes you can even go in and do crossovers and do 2 different divisions in the same show, which is awesome. You can get on stage and see which look played better in front of the judges. But personally, I would feel so lost without having a destination on this journey. And it just helps to mentally have something that you're shooting for. And then you also have the practical reasons, such as about 6 weeks out, you're going to want to have ordered a suit or rented a suit, and the suits are specific to the division. So that's something that you would want to account for. And another big thing is posing. We'll have a whole module on posing or a whole episode on posing, but that takes a while to learn. The people who are really good at it have been doing it for a long time, and it's beautiful and flawless, and it's so important for showing your physique, but it takes a lot of practice, and the posing for each division is different. Okay, so hopefully that answers most of the questions that people may have in terms of what to expect from a physique assessment. And I will say, for anybody who feels uncomfortable doing this, I totally get it. Whenever you're not in the best shape that you want to be, a lot of times that's why we're on this journey anyways. And it's tough to send in these pictures and kind of have that vulnerable moment. But just know, myself, and I would say pretty much any coach that you talk to, they're going to be looking for your strengths too. And I have never seen an athlete turn in their photos and not have just some wow factor, like some wow factor for the muscle density that I can see from the sport that they did years ago, to having really like nice long legs, or just like a beautiful flow to their body, like their way that their like hips tie in to, like, there's just so many great things. And you can, like, it's a good opportunity to explore your strengths, but also to see where we're going to want to chip away at the gaps so that we can make you sculpted to the look that you want on stage. And we'll talk about timeline awareness in there too. So a lot of times we get this in the Facebook group a lot, where women will put up their photos and ask how many weeks out they are. And sometimes that's a really tough question, because if you're carrying too much body fat to truly see your shape, which is never an insult. I mean, that's just, I'm just stating the fact, if you're carrying all this extra body fat, then it's a little bit hard to see, like, okay, like, where are you holding that in your arms, and are we going to see more shoulders as you lean out? Myself included, I did wellness back in like 2021 when it was brand new, and I was so excited because I was like, yes, wellness is going to be so great for me. I was a soccer player. I've got overbuilt quads, I thought I had decent glutes and hamstrings. I was like, I'm going to just like thrive in this new division. And then when I got about 3 weeks out from the show and was finally leaning out enough to be ready for the show, I did not look like I was a wellness athlete anymore. I could pose for it pretty well, and I still had a lot of muscularity, especially in my quads, but I had just lost so much body fat that I was holding on like the backs of my legs and my ass that I like looked much more like a bikini competitor, and ended up qualifying for nationals at that show and then going to do nationals in bikini with no consideration to wellness because I was just way too small for wellness. So that was just my personal experience there. And it's really helpful to know that and just have some flexibility. Okay. And then let's start getting into some of the lifestyle aspects. So this is something else that myself or another coach that you're talking to on a strategy call would want to unpack and explore, because when you go into prep, the biggest thing here is that you want this to be a positive experience. This is a really great way to reinforce excellent habits, and it is a good way to build stronger habits and more systems around your habits. But if you are going from like, I party every weekend, I never meal prep, I eat out, I'm inconsistent with my workouts, I sleep like garbage, I may or may not get into the gym. If you're going from that to saying like, I'm going to hop into a competition prep, that is a really big, a competition prep where I am dialed for a very long period of time. That is such a huge gap from like A to B, and we're not filling in A.1, A.2, A.3, like all the way up, all those little stepping stones that you really truly need to get you prepared to be able to do this without it triggering burnout, resentment, feelings of failure, and just like that self-efficacy. Like we want belief in ourselves that, you know, when we come out the other side of this, we're like, I did the best I could and I brought my best to stage and I'm happy with that. So I really, really hone in on the lifestyle aspect because it is so important to have that in place. And just so you know, a standard prep is going to be about 20 weeks long, and that's going to be give or take about 4 weeks, depending on where your conditioning is and or the athlete, like how they respond if the coach is used to their body. So that's a pretty standard timeline to like get in with a competition prep coach, which of course most coaches will tell you they want you working with them earlier. But that's about the standard, is that 20 weeks, give or take 4 weeks. Consider that, and then know that you can set yourself up for a little bit of success, or your coach may set you up with a pre-prep phase where you're kind of trying to get into the habit of things here, and you're trying to like reinforce these systems, see how you do. Can you stay super compliant? Personally, I would not want to work with a lifestyle athlete that was not showing me really solid compliance and say, let's prep. I would want to say, like, let's go for, can you do 4 weeks of being super, super compliant? Happy to do a deload on the back of it. Happy to do a diet break on the back of it. But I don't want to throw somebody that I don't think can be compliant into prep, because we're both going to be like basically just fighting a ridiculously uphill battle. So the first thing is going to be your nutrition. We want to make sure that we have the systems in place for nutrition. So your macros are going to be structured. Your macronutrients, the amount of carbs, protein, and fats that you're getting in a day. You should be used to logging these in the app of your choice. You should be used to making adjustments on the fly, knowing, you know, if you have to swap something, how to make it fit in. It shouldn't feel like you're white knuckling this process either. I always call it macro Tetris, where you like eat all day, and then you get to the end of the day and I'm like, okay, I've got 75 grams of carbs left and 50 grams of protein and 5 grams of fat, and like, okay, what do I eat? Like, how do I fit that in? So it shouldn't feel like that every day. There should be a lot of structure, repeatability, knowing your food sources well enough to be able to make those adjustments on the fly and have it not be a super big source of stress. And then in terms of your sources, the more diversity that you have going into prep is going to be better in terms of where you're getting your proteins, your carbs, and your fats from. Also, decent diversity in your fruits and vegetables. So I would shoot for like at least 3 different protein sources that are your go-tos that you cycle throughout the week. Carbohydrates, maybe closer to like 5, so that you're getting a lot of variety there. You also want to make sure you're accounting for your fiber. That'll come in with fruits and vegetables as well, which for each of those, I'd say have like 3 to 4. Or maybe some kind of like mixed veggies kind of thing, or mixed berries that you do, something like that. That's for micronutrient purposes, but it's really important to dial it in before prep, because as we get in and we're prepping, our food is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, which means our options come down, 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 down. Having those in place is just going to be really important for making sure that you have the proper micronutrients and your body's getting what it needs so you can have a healthier prep as well.
Quick question. Have you fallen out of your routine, or are you training and just not seeing the results that you want? You probably don't need more effort or anything else on your plate. You just need a better strategy. Inside the Physique Blueprint, we use bodybuilding principles, goal specific training, and evidence based nutrition to help you build strength, curves, and confidence. If you're ready to train with intention, the link to join us is in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the show.
And then weighing your food. I always feel like when I'm saying this on the podcast or talking about this on the podcast and it's going out to the world and I don't know who's going to like find these episodes and I don't know where they're going to be in their journey. It maybe sounds nuts, but this is really common. Like tracking and weighing food. Weighing food is part of tracking food for people who are serious lifestyle athletes or are competitive bodybuilders, even if they're in an off season, because this is performance. Like 90% of what we do is nutrition. We are building from within with the food sources and with the fuel that we give our body. And usually I feel like you always hear 80% is nutrition. I swear it's more with this sport. It's so important to have your nutrition dialed. So weighing your food at home, that should be pretty second nature. Have a good system in place. It shouldn't really feel hard for you, and ideally it wouldn't feel super hard for you anymore. And then weighing it when you travel as well, also very important. So having like a travel scale. I have a little flip out one that's perfect. It's travels really well and it's fits and everything, so that's worked out really well for me. Adherence. Nutrition adherence is such a tricky area because there's a lot of different ways to approach this. I was just talking for the last like 5 minutes about macros, but a lot of people prefer meal plans. Downside of a meal plan is that life happens and you do want to fit into like the rest of the world and have a life while you live this lifestyle. So I always think that a kind of a mix of a meal plan and macros is really the sweet spot for me personally. And whenever I get athletes in, I set them up on a meal plan that fits their original macros, and then I give it to them in a template that they can adjust. I do encourage them to use their app instead, but it's just meant to like give them a really good starting point with the resources that they need. And then from there, I say, okay, now you're in charge of the actual food sources. I'll review your food logs and I'll give you feedback on them. But this is a sample meal plan based on what your initial macros are. And we're going to change your macros as we go through this process. Being able to adhere to whichever variation or blend of those methods you want to use is so important. And again, it shouldn't feel like you're white knuckling it. In the off season, I think it's totally normal and totally good to get breaks and to get some intuitive eating days where you're just kind of eating what you feel like eating, not a binge day, not a go ham day. And if that's happening on your intuitive eating days, that's a red flag that you're not ready to start a competition prep or free meals, refeeds. Like we should have a good blend here of being able to be on it when you need to be on it and being comfortable stepping away from it just with your relationship with the food whenever it's time to step away and give yourself a break, or you're in a social situation that you need to be able to navigate because life happens and you don't want to live like you're on prep all the time. Okay, so adherence, and then digestive health. It's really good to monitor your digestive health even whenever you are outside of a competition prep. So this is something I ask my athletes in their weekly check-ins, even if they are not prepping, is how is your digestion? If we start to see red flags there where it's like, yeah, I was a little backed up, or if they just tell me it was good every single week for weeks on end, I'll probably throw in a Bristol stool chart prompt. And it sounds so invasive, but especially as women, I feel like we have normalized the shit out of not taking normal shits. Like, so there are just so many women I know who have really bad stomach issues, and like we'll talk about it whenever we're like amongst friends and everything, but we've really normalized this to where we act like our digestion being massively messed up. So that's on a Bristol stool chart, that's going to look like you're on like a 1, 2, or 3 with like super loose stools, or like I think it goes up to 8. So like the opposite, like basically being constipated. And sorry if I'm misquoting the stool chart, I don't have it in front of me, but you want to be kind of in that sweet spot for normal digestion most of the time. And the great thing about monitoring it like this is that it does tell us a lot about our bodies. The first time a coach put me on this, I started to flag issues with my digestion that had you asked me, I would not have said I had. And then it turns out that I don't have a detectable noted allergy to lactose or gluten or anything like that. But when I take them out of my diet or I eat a lot less of them, especially dairy, my digestion is just better, like undeniably better. So it's just been something with learning my body. Okay, that's something that does cause inflammation. It does cause like some stomach issues. So it's a really good thing to give yourself a competitive advantage to have that dialed in, because digestion is so important for your hormone health, your hormone access, as well as the absorption of the nutrients that you're going to need to excel in this prep. Okay, we talked a little bit about refeeds, meal timing, and then let's talk about your training and your output. Being proficient in your lifts is going to be super, super important here. Ideally, I think it was Adam from Team Elite Physiques who has said it a couple of times, that the bikini body, when this is before Fit Model was a thing, the bikini body is not I woke up, I decided I wanted to do this, I've never done a sport before, and I dieted and I got on stage. That body does not come from that. This woman did not just cut out sweets for 20 weeks. That body probably took like I want to say that he would say it was like 3 years. And I think it's probably 3 to 5, really being on genetics. For context, for anybody who like sees me or follows me and like is kind of familiar with my physique, I've been lifting weights since I was 14 and I am 38. I'll be 39 this year. So to putting on enough muscle to be competitive in bikini takes a really, really, really long time. And of course, there are shortcuts because people can enhance with performance enhancing drugs or PEDs, which will definitely speed up the process. But especially if you're a natural competitor, maybe you're starting a little bit later in life, maybe like lifting is new to you, maybe you don't have an athletic background, that's why Fit Model exists. It's such an awesome division because you can get into it with not so much barrier to entry if this is like a sport that you want to explore more, and you can grow into the other divisions if you want to. But just know, if you're just starting out, there's no shame in just letting the stage wait and getting proficient in your lifts and learning how to hinge properly in a deadlift so that your glutes can like really take off and you don't get injured, and learning how to hip thrust and what does failure feel like. That's a really interesting sensation to fail on your lifts. And until you really know what failure feels like, it's kind of hard to say, well, this is 70% of my effort or this is 60% of my effort. So a good coach is going to take you through that and kind of like explore where your baseline is, challenge you on some lifts based on what they're seeing for your metrics, and hopefully critique your forms. I mean, there's a lot that we can even do as online coaches, but that's something that you want to be very proficient in. And you want to be able to have the routine down pretty well. Another note for starting off prep is going to be your cardio. No surprise that you do a lot of cardio in prep. So you want to make sure that your cardio starting out prep is not excessive. I would say like a couple light sessions a week tops, maybe. And I wouldn't even feel bad if somebody was doing like next to no cardio, because you're just going to up that number, up the number, up the number. Cardio is something that is cardio and nutrition, which I'm going to go back to one more point there. They're very adaptable qualities physiologically. So the more cardio we do, the more our body adapts to it, which is why I love bodybuilding, because it really works with us in cycles, to where it's like, all right, we're going to do a lot during this phase. Our body is going to adapt to it, but we're doing it for metabolic purposes to help us get lean. And then we're going to taper it down or possibly even pull it out in the off season, so that we can manipulate our bodies into responding the way that we want them to when we get into a prep. So cardio needs to not be excessive. And just to backtrack a little bit on the nutrition points, dieting needs to not be excessive at all. You need to be ideally in a small surplus, or where you've pushed up your maintenance as high as maintenance could be for you for your caloric intake. So everybody is going to have different basal metabolic rates for what their metabolism, like how many calories you burn just at rest. That's going to look a little bit different for everybody depending on like how much muscle you carry, your age, your height, your size, if you're more active with your job, things like that. Like all of those are going to be big factors in determining that. And you actually calculate in your activity level on top of your basal metabolic rate. Your coach will be able to determine that for you. But the point is that you want to make sure that you have not adapted to low calories before you go into a deficit, because really there's only so low that we can go before your body is going to start having adverse reactions, because you're not giving it what it needs to like function. That's why people lose their period in prep. That's why, people can say their skin has issues or their digestion really slows down and things like that. So you want to make sure that your food is as high as it possibly can be, because you're just going to come down. So that's a really important adaptation note. And then to come back to training, I'm just going to lump NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, in with training. NEAT is one of the best levers, and we'll talk about this more in the fat loss episode, but that's one of the best levers that we can pull on for leaning you out in a prep, because that your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is usually going to be measured in your steps per day, is going to be the least systemic inflammation or inflammatory response that we can trigger, because it's something that your body is just made to do and handle without having this big reaction to it. Like, what the hell, like, you're putting us through so much stress and strain, but it does up your metabolic expenditure. So it's really important to have your NEAT not be insane. This is hard for some people. Like, when I work with like nurses and people like that did this on their feet all day. So their steps are around like 12,000, 14,000, really high like that. Kind of hard to avoid it. So if that is your case, like, yeah, we're probably going to look to like crank your food up and like, without bringing your body composition up, but we're going to look for some other levers that we can pull, because just for hours in the day, you want to be conscientious of how much NEAT you're adding on. So ideally around, I've heard 6 to 8,000 steps a day. I think that's a little bit low, just because I like to use NEAT in the off season for somebody to like kind of modulate their body composition. So I'd say maybe like 8,000 a day would be my sweet spot, but it would be athlete dependent. All right. And then behavioral compliance. Again, it shouldn't feel like you're white knuckling it in the off season to check in on time, to get your pictures in, to make it to the gym, like I mentioned earlier, to execute on your plan without a lot of emotion. There's a lot that goes into this sport in terms of body image. So, think about the off season when you're intentionally driving food up. And maybe that does reflect in the scale sometimes, largely because those glycogen stores go into your muscles and your muscles get fuller. It's not I agree with people with wanting to stay nice and lean in your off season. I think that's super important too, because you should feel comfortable in your body all the time. But it is just kind of accepting those different seasons for what they are, and being able to hold to the plan. If you're outsourcing it to a coach, being able to hold to the coach's plan without the emotion and feeling like you need to control things and change things. So it's very important to just check in with your behavior. Because prep's really not the time that you want to be like learning these things. It's when you want to be able to outsource it, rely on somebody else who knows what they're doing, and just execute like the athlete you are. And that, I will say with that, there are people that self-coach, there are people that have success self-coaching, but it's definitely the minority of people. We're actually gonna have an episode with a special guest who has done both self-coach, and she has been coached by a top team. So I can't wait to talk about that soon. And then recovery, sleep, and stress. These are so important. They are like the silent, I heard a coach once say that sleep is the most anabolic thing you can do, like more so than PEDs, because sleep and actually letting your body properly recover, that is when all of the gains happen and all of the growth happens. And it is also when athletes on prep, like, they get caught up on sleep. I see it, like, hear it all the time. I finally had caught up on sleep, got like 9 hours, dropped 2 pounds the next day. It's like your body has to recover during that time. So as somebody who is a lifelong not great sleeper, it's something I've literally gone to other coaches for to like help me work on. I have apps for it. I've tried different medications for it. I am in a much better place with it now. And it's one of the most valuable things I've learned from my bodybuilding journey, is to really systematically focus on that element of my health and my well-being. So make sure that your sleep quality is good. Your stress load is always going to be there. It's not going to get any better with prep. So make sure that you have ways of managing that, good ways to recover. You shouldn't be going into prep with like any kind of like injury or crazy like mobility issues. Your hormones ideally should be in a good spot, a good spot for you. I know that everyone's in different places in their journey. Everyone has different things going on, but we shouldn't have like just figured out that we have some kind of major like hormone dysfunction, or just came into like a new stressful situation where we're not sleeping well or something like that. It's just so important for your mental well-being during this process, but also for the efficiency of fat loss. Okay, so setting yourself up for success, making sure that you do have that. If you aren't doing this, you may be in a lifestyle phase now and feel like, yeah, I can do this. Like, all this is pretty check. I feel good about it. If you're not, then it's always good to give yourself like a couple weeks, or maybe work with your coach to give you a couple weeks in the pre-prep phase, just so you can get into that rhythm and build that confidence and self-belief that you can do this. And a personal share from my experience competing, I've competed 6 times over the course of like 10 years, just kind of when I get called back to the stage and want to do it again. But I will be the first to own that I've gone into a lot of my preps with my lifestyle not in a place where it should have been, or could have, would have, should have been, because that was just not my mindset. I've learned so much since getting more entrenched in the sport that that's really not the way to do it. And I didn't do like off season. So it's, all of these best practices, you can definitely get to stage without them. But your experience is going to be much better and your outcomes are going to be much better if you set yourself up for success. But something I want to make people aware of is if you are transitioning into that pre-prep phase, or if you are diving into a prep, it's very, very normal to feel like you are detoxing from the things in your life that you may want to eliminate during prep. So an easy example of that may be like doom scrolling on your phone at night because we're focused all day and you just want to scroll, and you do that to fall asleep, but then it eats away at your sleep. That's going to be a hard thing to let go of. That's something that your brain was getting dopamine from, and now we're just pulling it out, not necessarily replacing it with anything better. If you can replace it with something like maybe breath work or guided meditation or something like that. The really most obvious thing that you're going to feel like you're detoxing from if you have not been living the lifestyle pretty aligned with the prep is going to be food. Food releases chemicals similar to drugs. So you pull the food out all of a sudden and it is going to be tough. Like you're going to have cravings. You truly are in a deficit. So you are actually hungry instead of just like hey, I have a craving. Having a craving is one thing. Having a craving and actually being prep level hungry is a whole different thing. So just know that that's something to expect. And like sharing my personal experience, that's why I think the setup phase is really nice. I always have had a couple slips in the very beginning of prep before I really like lock in and I'm able to like, call it like flip the switch or dial in or whatever. I will have like a day where I just wasn't prepared and I had to eat something when I was out and on the go, or I'll have a situation where maybe I went out with like friends and I'm not used to being the person who's like, no, I'm not drinking. I'm just going to have a Diet Coke and hang out with you guys. Which is a big transition socially. Another thing that you need to be prepared for with the lifestyle, even if it is 20 weeks of prep. But just know that like I think it's probably pretty normal to have those slips and to have those missteps in the beginning as your body and your brain are transitioning into this different lifestyle and kind of getting into the rhythm of things. If you keep having those during prep, like so say that you're like 8 weeks out and you're binging and it's your first show, like that happens to a lot of people. First of all, I think a stat that I saw from, I want to say it was J3U, that said 40% of competitors report compliance challenges with their nutrition during prep. And I would guess the numbers probably actually higher. So just know that it's very normal. But if it feels like an out of control thing, or like it's like, what is going on with me? That could be a really good opportunity to talk to Celeste. Celeste has been on the podcast. Celeste Rainstark, she's a licensed mental health counselor. She has a ton of resources that are self-guided, and then she also does like one-on-one sessions. But since she works directly with competitors on both like interpersonal relationships and food relationships, she is a fantastic person to talk to, whether it's that cognitive behavioral therapy aspect where you're interrupting that pattern, or if it's just like, let's dig deeper and see what's going on here. Like, what is actually triggering this? And is this, how can you work on that? And the wonderful thing that I've always sensed with Celeste is that she's honoring your goals too. Like, she wants to keep you on track for this, but she also is going to help you with the resources that you need when you feel out of control on a prep. So she has contributed a masterclass to the app. So if you're a part of the Physique Blueprint community, then you'll have access to that. But she is fantastic for just everything that she does. And I've worked with her for some more like life performance stuff. And just every time I've talked to her, I get so much value out of it. So that is a very long endorsement for Celeste, but I think very highly of her and what she's doing for the industry. And I definitely think that anyone who's struggling with food relationship stuff or even interpersonal relationships in prep, you're struggling with an exacerbated version of your real life. So if you can go and talk to her and work with her now, it's going to just help you more on whenever you get to the other side of this accomplishment. All right, back end consequences. So this is another thing to just kind of anchor yourself in knowing that if you are working to get to stage, because it's like, once I do that, if I accomplish this, then blah, blah, blah. That is usually never the case. People get to stage, they do the show, they compete well, they bring their best, or maybe they don't, they win their pro card or they don't. Like, everyone gets to stage and you are still the same person that you were the next day when you wake up. And it's like, prep and going through this is a fantastic transformation for showing you what you can do, but it's not going to make your Instagram hit 1 million followers by morning, and it's not going to change that like big things that I think people come to this sport for validation around. And so I don't want that to sound negative, because I really do think that there's so many beautiful, wonderful, amazing amazing things that can come from this sport, and it can come from like the off season process of this sport too. I just think it's very important for people to have reality checks and honesty with themselves so that they can handle it. Celeste actually has a whole course on post-show blues too. So if it's something that you find yourself in that situation, check her. I think it's celestial.fit is her website. Other things to consider: if you skip the foundations, like the food, the nutrition, having to push so hard to get like just stage ready, like know that this is a very extreme sport. I know there's that kind of baseline that people will say of not going under 1,200 calories for women. I've been under 1,200 calories for very long periods of time while on prep, while doing like 90 minutes of cardio. So it's like you push for those extremes depending on the level of competitiveness that you have told your coach you want to bring to this sport and bring to stage. So just know like they're trying their best to guide you given what you're telling them, but that can cause a lot of hormonal disruption. If you aren't careful, it can cause gut issues, especially on the back end of it. Body image struggles are a really big thing in this sport too. So it's really important to play the tape forward and have a plan. All right, I do the show, I nail it, I'm so happy. And then what does my meal look like that night? And then what does it look like the next day? And having a reverse in place. And we'll go more into this in another episode, but getting your reverse in place is so, so important, because if you do not nail your reverse, as someone who has not nailed reverses and majorly fucked them up, you can disrupt your gut for sure. Like kind of give yourself like leaky gut syndrome, like just stress your digestive system out so bad that it takes a while to heal from it. If you have hormonal dysregulation, you can exacerbate it on the back end of prep. You can also, there's also the body image issues, of course, whenever mentally not ready to like put back on that weight. The good thing about that post competition window is that it actually is a really great opportunity for an anabolic window where your body is just like, oh my gosh, more food. So if you're bringing in that food really strategically, it goes to the right places. You're going to look so full, which just means that your muscles are like filled out and they push against the skin more, which makes you look nice and lean still. You're going to get softer. Like that's just part of the process. It's good to just look at the positives of like, okay, yes, the scale is going up. And that was something I was fighting against for the last 20 weeks. But now I know that my lifts are going to go up like exponentially compared to what the scale is going up. And I get to go back to doing like all of these things that have to be backburnered, or typically are backburnered for prep, or you probably have projects on your plate or work things that you like haven't been able to take on for a while, or maybe there's a vacation 6 weeks after that you're like really looking forward to, and you want to slowly nail that reverse so that your body doesn't get overwhelmed with food, because people go on that post-show rebound and then just eat, and your body's just overwhelmed. The muscles aren't able to assimilate the glycogen stores, and then you end up just depositing body fat and putting on a lot of body fat onto an already depleted frame, which is not a good place to be. Also just not feeling good, like it sucks to do something that's that hard, get your body into that level of conditioning and shape, and then just feel like you just tanked on the back end. All that said, it's really hard. So have a plan in place. I polled the group recently on this: what's harder, the prep diet or the reverse diet? 91% said the reverse diet. So just know it's a challenging thing. You want to be very prepared for it. And as many times as I cited that prep is typically 20 weeks long, go ahead and think of it as 26 weeks long, or like 24. I'd say probably 26 if you're like truly dieted down. Like that's probably a minimum, because that post-show reverse diet of slowly bringing up your food is going to feel just as hard, if not harder, than prep. Okay, and then assess your risk. If you are very all or nothing, there's nothing wrong with that. Those people do great in this sport. The box checkers, the list makers, the like kind of black and white thinking people that are a little bit more extreme. I swear this sport like attracts us. I think it really can just bring in that personality type, but that's something to know, that prep is going to probably intensify that, and we really want to set you up for success on the back end. So just know, like, if your coach gives you a refeed or something like that, like take it, embrace it, but challenge yourself to go back, just to have that fluidity between like the all or nothing thinking, and look for the other things outside of prep that keep us well rounded. We want to have blinders on for sure, because it's kind of necessary for success in this sport, I feel, but you want to be able to know that those blinders are on and be able to take them off when it's appropriate to do so. And then your identity tied to your physique, like I was going on the little soapbox earlier, nothing about getting on stage is going to change who you are as a person. And Austin Kygard, who's been on the podcast as well, he's fantastic. I loved his, I think it was in the hot seat question, said what was like the best advice. And he was like, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody cares if you're a pro. Nobody cares like if if you do like win all of the medals or whatever. And I will say, like, I think people care. I care if you do those things. I think it's awesome. But I love the sentiment of what he's saying. Like he's taking the gravity off of the sport and he's just approaching it with like levity and like life matters and your character matters and what you can actually learn from this. That all matters more. All right. So wrapping up, how to nail your competition prep, the things that you really want to have in place to set yourself up for going into a competition prep. So we talked about the physique assessment, just giving yourself a target that you're shooting for, but keeping that little bit of fluidity in your mind, knowing that it could change, and that's good, that's fine. And then also the lifestyle factors, nutrition, training, sleep, rest, recovery, mental flexibility, and having that growth mindset that we're here to learn from this. And, adherence is better than perfection. And the effort is really what matters. Keeping your timelines realistic. This is another thing that people can kind of butcher in a prep, is just trying to be a little bit too ambitious about those timelines. So just getting feedback from a coach on what your timeline is. Don't register for a show 20 weeks out. Give yourself some flexibility. Some coaches will have their athletes register like a week out. That would be stress me out to do it that way personally, especially because I'm always traveling for my shows or have been in the past. But you don't need to book it even like 2 months out. Give yourself a lot of flexibility and work the plan and listen to your coach. And then managing your fatigue. We talked about a lot of things that you can do for this in terms of like the sleep, the rest, recovery, the nutrition aspects, but know that prep is going to downregulate your entire system. It is really exhausting. It's hard. Your time gets sucked up into just everything that goes into this. So just managing that proactively is super important. Okay, so in conclusion, competition preps can be such a fantastic way to reinforce habits, to really show yourself what you can do. I don't want to say build an identity around it, but just if it's for you, you'll know it's for you. And there's nothing more powerful than having that, like, I know who the fuck I am, and this is like, I choose to own it. And I always say, like, I don't be afraid to be weird. Like, I'm always the one who will show up with Tupperware because I made this food at home and I want to eat it. It doesn't faze me anymore. So I do think a lot of that has come from doing 6 competition preps to where I just had to get over it. And so it's a really great opportunity to learn and meet amazing people along the way. Some of my best friends I've met from the competition community. So if that's something you're interested in, make sure that you're in our Facebook community, Women's Bodybuilding and Lifestyle Athletes. I'll link it in the show notes, but that's a fantastic space to ask questions. We have a ton of coaches in there too. Get support, put up your progress pictures, share what's going on in your life, share your challenges. We've got discount codes in there, like all kinds of fun stuff. There is a starter kit for building your hourglass physique if you'd like to get moving on that and make sure that you are on the path and taking the right steps and not wasting your time with self-sabotage. That is going to be in the show notes as well. And I mentioned that this is all for the mock prep challenge, or this educational competition prep series is. So if you want to get waitlisted for the next challenge, I'll put that in the show notes as well. Thank you guys so much for listening and stopping by, and I hope you are all having a great day.